Okay, cool. So talk about your own mistakes first. This is like, it goes hand in hand with this idea of, beginning with praise and like eliminating negativity, because you don't really want to talk about what other people do wrong, right? And it's this idea of like indirectness, right? And so when you talk about your own mistakes first and you say that, I used to do this wrong. I was bad. I made this mistake. I've done it a couple times today. I said I used to have a really bad situation. I used to be in this tough world. A lot of times when I'm telling people about how I got into personal finance and investing, I tell them hey, I used to be totally lost and I had no clue what I was doing with my life or my finances or my investments. And so you talk about your own mistakes first, because when you talk about your own mistakes first, remember, you want the other person to feel like they're on this pedestal of significance and importance, and you're all the way down here. And even if you're making a ton of money from some sort of deal, or you're getting a ton of value from this, and they get just a little bit, you want them to feel like they're the winner no matter what. You want them to feel like they have somehow won something over from you, if they pulled one over on you, or just you want them to feel like they're way above you, right? And so that's the way you have the biggest impact with whatever it is that you do. And so for being indirect, right, is this idea that you want to say, okay, so I used to have this mistake, I made this mistake, bad things happen, and even if they made this exact same mistake, and even if they had this huge screw up, don't say that they made a screw up, because if you attack them or you assault them, then they're going to get defensive, right? And so you want to make it about you, because you can criticize yourself and they're not going to be upset. They're going to agree with you and they're going to start to go on with you and try to defend you. So they're going to be on your side when you criticize yourself, but they're going to be super pissed off at you if you attack them. So you want to talk about what you did wrong and the problems that you had, especially as you start to work with other people on projects, right? And maybe you used to do task X, you used to do one task, but then you moved on to the next task, then you move on to the next task, and then you are working with somebody who does this first task, right? And instead of pointing out their mistakes and what they're doing wrong, say, hey, a long time ago when I was doing this, I used to have this problem where I would do blah, 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 and that's what they're doing, right? But you don't say that's what you're doing. You say it was a problem for me, and the way that I overcame it was blah, blah, blah. And so the instant that you're able to do that, everything changes, right? Because you're framing it as a way of I wish I knew this a long time ago. And as you can share that with somebody, you're not saying, you're doing this wrong, but you're saying, this is the better way to do it. You're indirectly implying what they should do. Really great example is there are so many new investors that go into their first investments and their portfolio kind of looks like this. They've got half of their portfolio in one stock, a quarter in another stock, and another quarter in another stock. And it's just awful diversification. Again, if you guys remember from 9 to noon, it's 5 to 7%. It's pretty solid. It's kind of what I found for starting out with your portfolio. So what I will do is I see people do this, and I don't say, oh my God, that's terrible diversification. That's a bad way to invest. If I do that, it's just going to attack them, and they're going to feel like this little guy right here. They're not going to feel like this big guy up here. And so if they feel like this little guy, they're not going to really listen to me, and they're not, it's not going to have the impact that I want, or that would help them succeed with their investments, right? It's going to crush them, especially for long-term portfolios here, right? And so instead, I step back and I say, when I was first starting to invest, I remember I made some of my first investments, and I used to have really bad diversification just like this. And then I tell them about the story about some my first investments, and I talk about all the mistakes that I made, and all the challenges that I went through, and all the losses that I had, and all the big problems that I had to go through, and how I had to work through all of these stocks and trade hundreds and hundreds of stocks just to realize that it was not the best strategy for the long-term investments to have this awful portfolio diversification. And only after I started constructing some of my first really great portfolios did I realize that 5 to 7% worked way better than anything I was using here, right? And so it's this idea that I'm not saying anything is wrong with them. I'm not even talking about their portfolio. I'll look at this. I remember this one kid. He was super cool, awesome, passionate young guy. He started making some of his first investments. He had half of his portfolio in Apple, another half in GE, And then there was like, it wasn't exactly half. There was a little bit more in some upcoming IPOs called Beyond Meat, which performed really, really, really well, which was awesome. Oh my God. It was just so much fun. My gosh. And so like he had like a lot of his portfolio balanced, like the vast majority. It was like very, 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 very bad diversification, especially considering that he wanted to have this portfolio for like 3 to 7 years, right? And so it was this long-term portfolio, but it had awful diversification. And so like at the time, Apple was super high, and I knew they were about to gank down, mostly because of like a MACD crossover, and also stochastics. So just some basic technicals. And so like there was like a significant reason to change what he was doing and to move away from the bad balancing that was here, or else he could lose like a lot of his money, maybe 5-10% of his portfolio, which that sucks, right? That's a big hit in just a couple of months. And so what I did was I did not say a single word about how his portfolio had poor diversification, or how the portfolio I didn't talk about him at all. All I do is I talk about my own mistakes and the problems that I had when I started investing. And you like only talk about like all the losses and the pain that you went through and your own mistakes, so that you're belittling yourself and making them feel like, oh, well, I'm so glad that I didn't have to go through that process. I'm so glad that I didn't have to have that mistake, or I didn't have to lose all that money. I'm like the coolest person ever, right? Because I didn't have to lose all that. I'm a winner, right? And so you want to belittle yourself and talk about all of your mistakes, and then slowly and indirectly imply the solution, indirectly imply like what they should do to have success. And as soon as you do that, like everything changes. It is so powerful. And you want to do that like for all of your investments and everything that you do, because as soon as you can move towards this idea of like indirect suggestion and indirect, this is what you do, but you're just gently saying it, everything changes. And it's so cool. And so highly recommend, like, if you can make this happen, you want to focus on like the indirect solution of what's going on, and very, very carefully and slowly let them know that, like, hey, you know what? This is reality, and this is what you should do. But you're not like explicitly saying that. You're just slowly suggesting it by putting them up on this pedestal and making them feel like the king, and not, like you care. I care about this guy's portfolio, but not that much. Because I know that if he loses 50% of his portfolio, he's going to freaking learn. So I just want to help him learn, the easy way. And so, like, you have to care, but not that much. And when you don't care that much, it's much easier to be indirect instead of direct, right? Because, like, you can say, hey, this is what you should do, and then just back off. Say, I don't care that much. Because it's up to them, right? You can't, like, force somebody to change. It's up to them, especially if they want them to have like lasting change, like a portfolio management. I mean, these are assets. This knowledge is something that he will use for like literally the next 5 decades, 6 decades, 20 decades of it. So, however long this guy lives, like, he'll be using this knowledge and information. And so if I want to have a lasting impact on him, I can't force him to change. It needs to come from the inside. And that's pretty much like exactly what I do, right? And that's the strategy, is this idea that you want to talk about your failures and your problems. And as soon as you can talk about your own mistakes, you can sort of relate them. And they, like, the cool thing is, like, they will relate your experiences to themselves automatically. Because remember, people care about themselves before anybody else. And they are their number one. They care more about themselves than like anything else on the planet. And so because they care so much about themselves, like, they're going to want every single thing that they do to be about them, right? And so they'll automatically use their mind to relate it to themselves and relate what they're doing to them. And so you don't even have to like explicitly say it. All you have to do is give them the information and let them combine it around in their head and figure out which parts they can use. And as soon as you do that, all of a sudden everything changes for them and for you, because at that point and from that point forward, they have total and complete clarity, and they understand exactly what you're talking about, exactly what they're doing, which is just so powerful. And that's really why you want to focus and go all in on talking about your own mistakes first. Awesome. Okay. A royal problem. Okay. Starlight gets called by the cutie map to go to Canterlot, and so she goes over to Canterlot. She's got like a friendship problem and stuff, and she doesn't really understand it at first, so she just kind of like goes to the castle and she's staying with the princesses and just having a party. And she wakes up in the morning to have breakfast with Celestia and Luna. And Starlight, she sees them, and they're like super fun, right? Because they're sisters, right? And they're supposed to have fun together, they're supposed to be with each other, and like support each other. But the problem is they're sort of like arguing, right? And so there's just a little bit of like underlying tension between the two, and like they're definitely connected and together. But this bond and this relationship, it's hurt, right? It's tampered with by this constant bickering and arguing, and they're just going back and forth, and it like shows it's like, what's really going on at the core, right? And it's this question of the underlying tension that's causing the two to sort of fight. Like they're at breakfast, right? And Celestia's making like tons of like smiley face pancakes and being the nicest sister ever. And like Luna just like turns her down, and she's just ridiculously tired because at night, right, she has to she gets to, go and, look at everybody's dreams. And so she's got like this one thing she does, and she does it super, super, super well. And so as she monitors everyone's dreams, she's got to stay up like all night, and it's a tough job for her. And so she looks at her sister, and she thinks that her sister just sits around and makes pancakes and smiles and has fun with everybody. And so she doesn't she thinks that she's got like such a tough and difficult thing that the life that she's doing. And similarly, her sister, Celestia, she's got this whole huge thing that she does, right? And so every day she has to go and have tons of media and public relations and meetings, and it's just so much work for her. And so at the same time, she feels like distraught at the end of the day, and it's like the toughest thing ever for her. And it's like really, really, really painful to see like her sister not even like connect with her at breakfast and start the day off right by working together, which is it's so sad. And so that's really like what just crushes her confidence, and it puts up this barrier between the two. It starts to kind of break away at this relationship and this friendship, right? It's starting to fade away because they just don't understand. They like think that they have it the hard way, and that they get upset at each other because of that. And before we move on, like this one paradigm shift that changed everything for me, and it's something that these two really, really, really need to focus on, because they're like super, super stressed from their work and from their jobs and like what they have to do day by day to like have success and have their life win, just like succeed, right? And so for them, like they are always like complaining, at least at the beginning. Like I see a lot of people, they complain about the work that they do. They complain about all the stuff that they have at home or whatever, and like this complaining doesn't get them anywhere. It just kind of surrounds their lives, and their bodies with negativity, which is awful, right? And so this negativity, it kind of like crushes their productivity and destroys their growth. And so there's like this one really, really powerful phrase you can use, got to. And so for both of these two, like they need to stop looking at their jobs as something they have to do, or that, oh my God, I had to do all this work and it's the worst thing. Like replace had to with got to, right? Because the instant that you do that, like it's so much more gratitude in whatever it is that you're doing. And you're so much more grateful for the world around you, and it's just so powerful because you got to do something, right? It's not like you just had to do something, because that's not the goal, right? The goal is that you got to do something. And so Starlight comes in and she sees that these two are arguing, and she's like, they both have difficult lives, but they don't understand each other. They don't really know that yet. And so she casts this spell, and this spell, it sort of it switches their cutie marks, right? And it switches their bodies. And so because they switch the cutie marks, they switch roles. So basically, like, they switch duties for like 24 hours for a day. And so they have to like do the other person's job for the entire day. And both of them are like super happy because they think it'll be like super easy. Because again, they don't understand each other. They don't understand, all the work that goes into what they do. And so it goes super, super, super hard for each other, but they just don't succeed. And it's really, really, really tough. So, excuse me. Luna goes and she has to do Celestia's job. So she goes and smiles and waves at everybody all day. And because she has to smile like all day, she gets like super, super, super tired. And then she stops smiling at the school, and she stops smiling at a photo shoot. And what sucks is like she gets her picture published in the paper, and she's like super grouchy. And the headline is like, she ruined some fundraiser that that Celestia was going to and that she took the place of, because she wasn't smiling and being happy in front of everybody, and she was spreading negativity and fear and doubt, which is like awful, right? She's just destructive emotions. She realizes that like it's ridiculously difficult to smile all the time, and she starts to like hallucinate and like have these visions and these fears of like her being unable to smile and unable to do Celestia's job, which is awful. And then similarly, Celestia comes over to do Luna's job, and she's like in the night, in everybody's dreams, and trying to like control all the nightmares. And then like all of her worst fears start to confront her, and the world around her starts to cave and collapse, and she has like this like monster version of herself that attacks her. A nightmare moon comes and attacks her, and she's going through like all this pain and all this destruction, and like being attacked over and over and over again, which is just like terrible, right? And it's because of this work that they do together, which is just like destructive in all aspects, in all regards. It's just like ridiculously crazy what goes on here, and everything that they're doing is just really, really, really difficult. And so she realizes that, like, Luna's job is also like ridiculously tough, and because it's so tough, like what she's doing is very like tough and difficult, and so she has to realize that like, wow, this is really tough, just like what I'm doing is difficult. And so they realize that like both of their jobs are challenging, and both of them have a lot to put up with, and they gain a ton of respect for each other and the work that they do by simply doing what they do and taking their place for just one day. And so that was sort of like the help that Starlight gave them, right? Was this transparency, because originally they were not being transparent, but by being transparent and understanding exactly what each other, like what their jobs are and what they do, all of a sudden this transparency makes it ridiculously simple for them to understand each other. And as soon as they understand each other, they have a much deeper sense of respect for what they do, and this bond, right, this connection between the two is significantly strengthened, and they get much closer to one another because they realize that, wow, it's a lot of tough work, and they like put each other up on a pedestal, right? It increases their position. It makes them look so much stronger and so much better, because they understand that like they've got some difficult stuff to do, which is super helpful. Like especially if like you're arguing or something and you don't really understand like why someone's so upset at you. Like think about like the pressures and the stresses of like their everyday day, and that's exactly what this does. Is it lets them understand where they're coming from. It because if you were in somebody else's exact same situation, like so often, right, like you would act the same way that they act. If you had the same experiences and the same patterns daily, the daily actions that somebody else has, then you'd would act the same as they act, right? Because like the way someone acts is just a result of their environment. And so by putting yourself in someone else's environment, you can understand their perspective a lot better and see things through their eyes and better understand and control and contrast with each other, so that you can significantly strengthen your friendships and your relationships, have a much deeper bond and connection with each other, which is like super powerful. Awesome. All right, bam. Not asking for trouble. Okay, Pinkie Pie, she goes to Yakistan, which is again where like all the yaks live, and it's like this faraway place where no one really knows where it is. And they have like this huge festival once a year where all the yaks, they all stomp all over the place, and they like just have this huge party, right? And so Pinkie Pie is coming over to the festival. She's coming over for this huge party, and everybody gets together in the middle of town, and they make this huge pile of like wood and logs and sticks, and they all stomp all around it and have like this huge stomping party. And it's like the biggest thing ever, right? And they're super proud of this, right? Because like this is their tradition, this is their culture, this is what their parents did, it's what their grandparents did, it's what their uncles did. This is everything they have. It all comes from them being part of this culture, part of this tradition. And it's so powerful, and it's awesome, right? And so because of this, because they like take care of this and they make it happen, what's cool is like this connection, right? This underlying tradition, it unifies them and it strengthens their bonds and their connections to each other and as a group. And because they do it as like a whole group, everyone's together, it brings Pinkie into their world, right? And it takes her in as part of their mastermind, as part of their group. And because he's part of their social influence, part of their social sphere, it's part of what they care about, right? So like she has no clue about this like stomping event or like how it works or what she's doing, but what she puts her attention and prays towards it. And she participates in it and cares about it and focuses on it because she knows that the yaks care about it. And so she makes their interest her interest. And as soon as she does that, all of a sudden she has a significantly deeper connection with them because they see her like caring about what they care about. And as soon as that happens, all of a sudden there's this deep, deep, deep connection. And all of them have this huge level of success in their lives because they are with one another. And it's so, so, so powerful to see them with this massive success and impact. And it all kind of stems from the work that they do together and this connection that they have with one another, which is like the coolest thing ever, right? Because she is with them and she becomes part of them. And as soon as that happens, all of a sudden, it becomes so much easier for her to join the group and for her to learn from the group and for her to do things with the group because she's kind of gone through this initiation process, this idea of hazing, right? This is like some huge party that they partake together. And this initial ceremony, right, is the first part of this relationship that she has with the collective body, the collective mastermind of all the yaks. And now that she's gone through this initial phase, she's got this high level of respect and authority, and it's up to her now to either fade away or multiply it to significantly greater heights, as we'll see it throughout the rest of this episode, right? This idea that she has done the hard work and connected, not just with one of the yaks, not with just the king, but with the entire group. And as soon as she befriends the entire group, it is so much easier for her to have this huge level of impacting success by working with the collective mastermind and what all of them care about, which is so powerful. So while these guys are stomping all over the place, they live like in an icy world where there's snow everywhere, right? And there's this huge mountain. And at this huge mountain, there's like a ton of snow on top. And basically what happens is like all this snow falls off the mountain and there's a huge avalanche. And it like covers everybody because of all this stomping. It just releases all the snow. And there's like this massive avalanche that covers the entire city and the whole town that they live in. And so like Pinkie's freaked out because everything is covered in like 10 feet of snow. And so they don't have any homes, they don't have any fires, they don't have any food. And they're basically just like living by eating this snow and melting it into water and drinking it. And they have like, I mean, it's just like everything they have is gone and destroyed and buried in like 10 feet of snow, which is just like ridiculous, right? And so Pinkie's like freaking out. She's like, well, what the heck are we supposed to do here? You know, how do we overcome this challenge? How do we overcome this problem? And she said, and so like, you know, all the yaks come together, but like even when they're all together, it's really difficult for them to just like manually dig out all of this snow because it's just so much. And so instead of like trying to like fix the problem, they just have no clue what to do, and they just start kind of making like igloos and living on top of this, and just sort of like coping with it instead of actually trying to solve the problem. They just don't really have anything to do. Like they don't have magic. They're just like huge yaks. And it's like this whole city has just been engulfed in snow. And so Pinkie says that like she should get her friends to help. And the yaks say, no, they don't want help, right? They won't make a temporary sacrifice of their ego for a long-term gain of having that clean town, having that success, having, you know, all the snow eradicated so that they can go back and live with their lives. Like they will not raise their hand and say, I need help. And because of that, like, everything gets screwed over, right? And it sucks because, like, they really want to succeed. And they really want to connect with one another. And they want to have their town back. But they just aren't able to take that temporary hit to the ego to step back and say, hey, can I get some help? And that's what they need. That's what they have to do. They need the help. They need the answers. But the answers only come when they raise their hand and ask for help. And they just don't want to do it. And so Pinkie, she realizes this, and she understands that like they need help, or they're going to be trapped without food for like forever, and they're going to die, which kind of sucks. And so, in the middle of the night, she quietly sneaks back to all her friends, and she gets her friends right. She gets the main six together, and everyone comes together, and they come back to here, like in the middle of the night when nobody else is awake, because the thing is, right, she doesn't want to hurt their pride. And so a lot of people, they have this idea that like they don't want to work with other people because they are strong. They are like the center person. They're the most important. And so because they're like super, super huge, they don't want to like sacrifice their image or their ego or themselves in the short term to have this overarching long-term gain. And so that's sort of the situation that all the acts are facing, is they want to maintain their ego and their positioning and their beef and their pride. And they don't want the help of others because they think it'll make them look weak. And so in the middle of the night, Pinkie sees this and she understands the perspective. And so Twilight and her friends, they kind of magically like remove all of the snow, but they do it very carefully and very quietly in the middle of the night when like nobody's awake and nobody sees them. And it's just like all her and her friends doing it in this very stealthy way so that they feel like the snow just like naturally evaporated or washed away or something overnight. And it's not like they got help, but instead it's just a natural phenomenon that makes everybody happy. And so their goal, right, is to maintain this happiness, this positivity, and this self-image that they have. They don't want to hurt their self-image, but at the same time, they also kind of want to save them from this huge avalanche. And so they do it very, very, very carefully. They remove all of this snow, and in the morning, they all leave. They don't get seen by anybody, and except for Prince Rutherford. So like the king, the leader, he sees Pinkie's friends. He sees the main six walking away at the end and like leaving, and he realizes what happens, and nobody else really understands what happened, but he knows what happens. He looks at Pinkie and he understands it, like she made it at night so that it wouldn't look like she helped them, and so it looked like they were the winners and it was all natural. And he thanks her and he looks her dead in the eyes, and he is so grateful because Pinkie, she was able to get rid of her own feelings, and she was able to look through their eyes and understand what their perspective was and what they cared about and what they loved and what they were passionate about and the importance to them of staying on top and being the best. And she had her friends help, but only in a way that made them feel like it was all them. And he's so grateful and so thankful for what she did because it was so kind and generous, but it was also like set up so that it looked like it was for them and from their perspective and from what they wanted and for them, like the way that they would have done it. And so she has the way, she helps them and she saves them, and she, basically, like this relationship right here, the collection with the mastermind, is what she cares about and what she's been maintaining. And she does that, right, by looking through the way they would want her to help, and then being very, very careful to help only in the way that's going to be best for everybody. And it just absolutely crushed. Like this one act, it adds so much value to this mastermind and to this relationship that like the power of it just skyrockets. It's huge, 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 huge. There's no doubt. I mean, it's just massive, 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 massive. And so the growth here and the connection here is so big, and it's going to be like the foundation of the relationship between Pinkie and ponies and these yaks over time. And we'll see it so much more throughout the series. And it all really stems from this connection that she has with them and the work that she does to be on their team, which is like the coolest thing ever. It's really, really, really awesome. She does an amazing, amazing job with it.